funded in a certain way, there are still skills, there are still ways of running an organization in order to get to that profit that has to be taken into consideration. So the alignment is great, and how people get together and so on is all a really good thing. As you know, Brad, my master's is in social and civic entrepreneurship. So looking at the power of impact, both socially and in the profit world, is part of my background in general. But so, yeah, I still have questions about what that might look like, but I think it's a great starting point.
Well, thank you. And I think the decision of, is this a specialization inside of it, or is it the actual thing, is really going to come from really your decision. But I think my hope is you're going to get advice today on how where that might be or how that might help. What I've done is, and I do have your PowerPoint, but it'd be actually easier if you're at a place that you would share that. What I'm doing right now, just real quickly, is before we jump into that, is just to get some context. And that is just some links that I sent to y'all. Y'all got that? And if you noticed, in terms of deal flow, many of you are familiar with the Lion's Den. Kurt has been heavily involved with the Lion's Den. He's actually been somebody that's been a part of that. Praxis Labs is this organization here, and I don't know why it's not letting me open the hyperlink. And so my nephew has actually been a part of this. Let me share that. And it's actually kind of an interesting deal flow system. Most of you are familiar with that. I'm just going to quickly show you that. Basically, Praxis Labs is where they gather a cohort of business leaders and a cohort of nonprofit leaders every single year. And in that, they then coach people through it. What I found, and what my nephew has said, is that a lot of it is people coming in and talking. So a lot of lectures, they bring in Steve Garber, who does theology lectures. They have some mentoring, and then maybe if Howard and Kurt have been a part of this at a deeper level. And sometimes when I share, I can't get to their menu, but their menu will show. Here we go. Accelerated alumni. Anyway, what I wanted to do is show you their alumni, because I think that's important. Let me just see quite quick. We get to Creative Engine Impact. I'm sorry, I can't see to get to it. When I'm sharing my screen, I don't get the full website. But the point is they have a deal flow that people have gone to, but they found that they've done a great job of finding people, but they're not necessarily coaching them. For us, that's a great draw for us to go in and recruit out of Praxis Labs, because there's a whole bunch of them, to say next step would be is to go through the MBA and perhaps have it paid for by your impact investor, or somehow 50-50 split, or it helps you take your idea to the next level in a structured environment. So I think there's actually a market of impact and entrepreneurs that we might be able to find. Lion's Den, same place. I think we could find them there as well. So let me stop at this point. Before you do your PowerPoint, I would love for Kurt first and then Howard secondly, is to give us kind of their background in impact investing and just an initial thought about the positives and the negatives about this idea. So Kurt, if you don't mind going ahead.
Could I ask one question for you? Could you give me your personal concept of deal flow, what you're thinking when you talk about that in this program?
So deal flow, and again, Kurt's going to give you more detail, but a deal flow often is a CEO and an idea, and it's going to come from different places. It could be, the problem is most of it is going to be ideas that have a CEO that's not ready. They may be really a nonprofit person, and they've got all these ideas, but you talk to them about 5 minutes, you realize they haven't really put it in a viable business model. Or you may find somebody that actually is more of a seasoned entrepreneur, and they're trying to open up into impact investing, but you have about a 5-minute conversation or longer, and you realize maybe they don't really have the character or the passion. They just want to start a business. And you're really asking the question, have you really thought through the sustainability of it? Obviously, an angel investor is going to come in when the idea is not fully formed and the person's not fully formed. An impact investor will come in a little bit later when it's further along. What Kurt does is wherever they are, he mentors them to the next step. But he's also very careful in rejecting 20 out of, he always accepts 1 out of maybe 20 ideas, which is what an impact investor would do based upon his own sector knowledge, what he's related to, and how far along the person is, how far along the idea is. If he likes the person, if he likes the idea. But deal flow could be anywhere from early stages idea and person to somebody who's pretty seasoned and moving along, and it's not angel investing, it's actually building capacity and building scalability. And again, investors are going to be at anywhere from angel to scalability, and they know kind of typically where they want to be. And then an MBA could bring somebody at any point and help them move to the next level if they're mentored in the right way. So Kurt, you could answer that much better, but that's how I've seen it listening to Kurt and others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be here and share thoughts and brainstorm with this. I mean, from what I'm hearing and kind of how it relates to BGU is looking at the MBA program and thinking about differentiation of that MBA, or kind of what is it known for? How does it stand out amongst the crowd? How does it perhaps overcome trends? What is clear is there is a growing trend called impact investing. And I do believe there is a real trend there. The question is that a trend worth hitching a wagon to? And is it viable for the MBA program here to kind of hitch to that and use that as the differentiator or not? I am an impact investor. I started my career as a management consultant. Then I became kind of part of an entrepreneurial team that then I had my first entrepreneurial venture was a failure, joined another team, and we kind of hit, after some pivoting, hit a real growth engine in the digital data collection, online market research area, and then kind of went up with that, and then it became a mid-size company, I would say. And so I was more or less became a CEO of a international company as it grew. And then I stepped away from that several years ago with kind of an exit and for some personal things. And what I do now, and I would say I'm partly self-taught, partly just been learning as much as I can from others over the last 2.5 years, have become an impact investor myself. If you go to a website I've kind of put together called Realm Resources, no hyphen, word Realm Resources, and that's a .net, not a .com. But it talks a little bit about the positioning of the portfolio that I work with and kind of what I'm doing. But I'm looking at both profit and purpose. And there are companies that I call business as mission, where there's an aspect of what they're actually doing in their business model that's changing lives and making a difference. And it's a for-profit mechanism that is making that happen. And I do believe that there are certain things, ministries and social causes that can be furthered faster and better with a for-profit mechanism. Because there's access to capital. Sometimes you can get some really quality people, very passionate, and you put all that together and it can really go. There's a spot for nonprofits, there's a spot for for-profits. It's kind of one of those things that just is about the mix of people that come together and what they're trying to do. But there's a growing, I think, appreciation that for-profits can solve some great problems that the world suffers from. And that's called business as mission. And, some people will say, without Jesus, there's no BAM. Okay. And other people kind of make a broader definition of business's mission, that it's anything that is a social good, social type of benefit in the business model linked in with the for-profit. So there's a spectrum there. Then there's business for mission, and that to me is more helping an entrepreneur who has a noble cause, a business person, an entrepreneur who can be successful with their business in whatever noble field it might be. And there's not necessarily beyond the culture, a great culture and building jobs and creating economic benefit for the community and through that. There's not really a social cause that they're solving, but that entrepreneur, when they build wealth, will then be giving that away aggressively into ministries and missions and other things as they personally grow wealth, or perhaps even pledge, some aspect of it, after the fact. And so what I like to invest in is a business that has all the markers of a great growth business on all the measures that you want to be very selective on to make sure that it's going to last and really be a great business. That it has a purpose, a business as mission, or business for mission, one of the two. And the ones I really love have all of them together. Those are what I call double barrel or triple barrel, type of things, and they really get my attention. I have one company that's actually got a quadruple bottom line, and they're helping the environment at the same time, social and ministry, and a great for-profit business. So that's super rare. But in any event, I think impact investing is catching on. There are more and more, you can look, there's some white papers and some trend analysis to support this, that more people are getting into it. As Brad said, they're taking, hey, I can make a difference, and I can put that together with business and invest and make some money, whether it's financing with debt or equity, and that's a growing on-trend thing. So the thing about MBAs, and it is true that there's impact investors like myself, want to see as many deals as we can that have those markers, and so I'll invest time in different networks, so like the Lions Den. The link on here is the one that they have in Birmingham, Alabama each year. There's a different link. It's actually a separate organization for the one they do in Dallas every year, but there's kind of a franchise concept for that that's starting to grow. I've been more involved in the Dallas one. But you build these networks amongst people, Christian businessmen that have made money, that are wanting to reinvest it as an impact investor, other impact investors that want you to come into their deals so they can kind of raise more money and kind of share risk and share reward. Foundations like the Impact Foundation and National Christian Foundation, where people can put their extra money in and get a tax break, and then put that into, instead of just giving it to a charity, they put it in there so it can multiply and make a difference. So there's lots of different varieties of that. What I would say is, from a practical matter, the entrepreneurs that I work with are incredibly busy. They are on mission to hair on fire, trying to, make that thing go. They need to raise money, and they need to grow their markets, and they're over capacity. So to think that they're going to, okay, I'm going to now do an MBA right now, has some challenges just from a time capacity perspective. Not to say that there aren't some people with some great ideas that need more training and need more well-rounding, especially internationally, where they can benefit from that. But where I'm focused is companies that already have revenue. They're still early stage, but they're already somewhat established, and a lot of times these entrepreneurs have the credibility. They've got MBAs. They've been doing things in industry for a number of years, and now they're kind of pulling it together in an entrepreneurial venture. I do think there's some earlier stage friends and family rounds and angel rounds that, you know, people that have great ideas, a lot of creativity, don't have an MBA, maybe they're in an international environment where they really can't take the time to do a 2-year, 1 year, and they don't have the facilities near them to do it. And kind of there is a trend in online MBAs that is a strong trend, because there's a lot of people that can't take off from work and spend a year or 2 years in a full-time program. So there's been a lot more popularity with the distance learning and the MBAs, kind of virtual MBAs, and that's very valuable to people. Don't know how the program fully is working at VGU, but that's kind of an on-trend thing as well. I guess I'll just stop there. I mean, I do think that it has a lot of potential to, you know, because impact investing is all about, as Lynn said, you know, social and services, you know, entrepreneurship, where you're blending the for-profit with the social benefits. So to me, that's on point with, you know, a Baki type brand, a Baki type mission, you know, to say we're not just doing MBA for any reason, secular reason. We want to have this social impact as well. And lastly, a lot of the younger people, on the last board I was on, a guy named John Dayton, who ran the marketing area of Harvard MBA for many years. You know, we were doing more at our company with the social benefit, and he was saying, you know, I had MBA students, you know, from the generation before. They never wanted to talk about anything nonprofit or social benefit. They looked at it as like two different camps. Either you're a capitalist or you're not, and you're helping people. And he said now that's all the MBA students want to talk about, is the purpose, the mission, the blending of these multiple bottom lines. And that's what's driving a lot of it's not just business, used to be just business ethics, and we'll teach you ethics so that you won't get off track and do dishonest things in your capitalist pursuits. But now it's all about how can we holistically, you know, help you make a difference and do it the right way. So anyway.
It's very good. It's very helpful. Lynn, you're the boss of this meeting, and so I want to make sure you've got everybody here captured. And also we have Lynn Hendricks is here, who's one of the graduates. To make sure you've got their attention, I'm going to give them a 2-minute break to go get their lunch. So if you guys would pick out your lunch over there, there is, I guess, drinks in the refrigerator.
Yes.
So Lynn, you as well. So, and then that way you've got them captured here. You've also got Howard Morrison, who looks like he's not eating yet. So you can also get him captured. And so you're really, go ahead and get your lunch. Okay. So the thought being is, Lynn, think about, you know, how you want to follow up with that presentation with your questions, how you want to maybe ask Howard to tell his story, when you want to use your PowerPoint. But at this point, I'm going to give them a break just so they're sitting down and you got them. Because obviously, as you heard from Kurt, there's some really rich thinking there. So you're the boss of the meeting. I'm going to give it over to you. You also still have David Cyrus here, and David's on the phone. And he's obviously got a huge business background, gigantic actually. And again, these are sometimes maybe introductory conversations for you to have later. There will be probably Dave Haytag is calling back in, and he may be here already. I can't tell from the phone numbers. And Kurt,
yep, I'm here, Brad. Yeah, I'm here.
So Dave's in the car driving, but he's listening. He's been a part of this forever and understands as he owns obviously a business in Edgerton here. In Edgerton, Wisconsin, and also Kurt Risley, who has the business We Create Peace, which is he has a mediation business, an HR business. He does advocacy for elderly people that need kind of custodians for the property and finances and a bunch of other things. So you've got some good resources on here that you can call to, and I'm going to hand it over to you. So we're getting them back. They're getting their lunch, and so they're kind of greeting each other. You've also got an MBA graduate from VGU, Lynn Hendricks, who you know, and hung out in Kuala Lumpur. If you want to pull her in to have any comments, she's here. She's a little bit off camera because the way I've got the camera angled, but she's here, and it's all yours. So take it away, Lynn. So go ahead and turn off you're muted. Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
Carolyn.
Carolyn Cochran is here, and she is an MBA graduate. I guess I'll unmute you. Okay. I think you're going to have to unmute yourself. I can't seem to do it for some reason. So go down to the microphone. There we go. Perfect. So Carolyn Cochran is an MBA graduate as well. So sorry about that. So Lynn, take it away.
Well, I'm just going to ask. Howard and I had an opportunity in the chat room earlier, but now that you've heard Kurt's comments, Howard, if you want to chime in again and to repeat things you've already said to me, but just add to the conversation.
Okay, well, that's very kind of you. I don't know that I'm going to go back and repeat everything that I said, because this is primarily, I believe, for your benefit, and so I'm just going to kind of assume that. But I really appreciated Kurt's comments. Thank you for that. Lynn, I think you've asked one of the most pertinent questions that needs to be answered. Is this an emphasis? Is this a part of the MBA program of BGU, or is this the new direction, North Star? This is what we're doing. I'm not going to weigh in on that. Yes, no, that's probably, I assume, both academic dean and board decision, or some variation of that. That's probably not to be decided today, although maybe informed by today. But it does hit at the core of one of the things that's real, just kind of, I think, organizationally too, is it's intended to be critical. It's meant to be instructive, but that is, BGU needs to answer the question, why do we have an MBA program? How does it fit into our mission, vision, values? And it may fit perfectly today, or it may have fit perfectly in the past. Okay, great. Any changes need to make sure it still fits. So start with the why. Diamond said it. And if that can't be answered, don't go any further until that can be defined. Is this to be a financial generator for BGU? Okay, that informs something. Is it to be something that current BGU grads would move toward? Great. Is this something that no one's ever heard of BGU, but they bump into this, and so it's a whole new niche? But that soon needs to be defined as to why this is being done, as it defines your audience, and then it defines how you communicate to people as to whether they'd resonate with it or not. So let me give you a very quick example of that. And this kind of was spurred on by Kurt's comments. Quadruple bottom line. Well, does that resonate primarily with a Christian audience or non-Christian audience, or equally between the two? Is BGU wanting to reach the secular world with a faith-based educational model? Is it both and? Well, these have, the answers to these have huge implications on faculty, curriculum, marketing, etc. And I'm not here, and probably not in a position to be able to say it should be this or should be that, but I think these are really important questions. When I was doing my research that I was talking to you about and bumped into impact investing for the first time in my life, way behind everybody else in this realm, I very soon became convinced that the Christian community, kingdom community, needs to come up with a new term. Because if the same term is used for the non-believing world and the believing world, then there's a lot of confusion. Somebody who enters in this and they're saying, I'm a believer, I want this to have kingdom impact, and that's how they define quadruple bottom line. And then they hear Impact Investing Foundation somewhere, and they may hook their wagon to the wrong star. Now, that's a personal opinion. I'm not trying to remake that whole market, but you may have been familiar with Jeff Johns in Albuquerque. It's called Impact Investing Foundation. Spent a year in Austin, and I happened to meet him last year. Really enjoyed. He's a great thinker, and he helped me a great deal with struggling with some of these definitions. But is BGU wanting to connect believing investors with non-believing entrepreneurs? Okay, is that truly quadruple bottom line, or is it the same bottom? It just has, I think, huge implications as to who we're talking about and where this vote is, the trajectory of this discussion. There's probably not wrong answers, but there probably needs to be a consensus as to what the answer is among the leadership of BGU. And I think I'm probably gonna, well, one last thought. This is akin to the question that often comes up in the theology of work classes is if you want somebody to fix your plumbing problem, do you want a Christian plumber or do you want a plumber who's a Christian? Or neither? Or you just want a good plumber? Well, what students? What's the outcome? What's the objective? Who are the resources you draw to steer and guide and influence? It can be very broad and be very successful. That's how you're going to get more students. Or it can be very narrow. What I mean by that is well defined, and so somebody knows whether this MBA program is for them or not. And as you might imagine, you get 15 people in the room, you probably get 22 opinions about the answers to these questions. But so I'll just finish by start with why.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you one question, Howard, about our previous conversation?
Of course.
When you said that you are currently working with a company that's invested in Ethiopia,
Yes.
was that a specific ask on your part, or it just turned out that the company you were wanting to invest in was working in Ethiopia?
I was searching for that kind of business and found them. So it was a cold call on my behalf to them.
Okay, all right. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen here. It's interesting. I always laugh when God does this, when things that I have prepared are already conversations on the table. So did we switch there? Okay, everybody see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Again, this was just talking points, as Brad has already said. I'm hoping this is simply the beginning of conversations, and that we can continue having this. I'm not expecting to come to any conclusions today, but just to put some talking points on the table. We've already talked a little bit about this, and that is how MBA programs in general are perceived. Bloomberg called it public enemy number one, The Guardian, academics of the apocalypse. So ROI today is very unclear of whether it's valuable to go to school, get an MBA, and does it actually move you up in your organization? The question about the why and is it valuable, should you be doing it? I would go back to at least my understanding, and I'm a newbie in all of this compared to you guys, and that is Dennis is representation. I love to tell the story of walking the streets of New York with Ray Bakke when I was there with him as a student in 2011, I think it was. And I said, Ray, can I ask you a question? I said, it seems to me that when you talk about the city, you only talk about the poor. And if we're actually focused on the city, shouldn't that conversation be broader? And Ray turned to me and looked at me and said, you need to talk to my brother. So for me, if one of the tenets of BGU is the conversation of the city, then business as we know it has to be a part of that conversation, not just the urban poor. That's just my opinion, and that is something absolutely needs to be clarified within BGU. The other thing that I'll just put, I'm going to put me here down on this last bullet point, is I did a lot of research when I was doing my master's in pastors and churches. Actually went on staff of a church intentionally to look at this idea of theology of work and what are the roadblocks, why is it the church is resistant to this. And so what I would say is, in my opinion, every DMin program should have business classes embedded in them. I think part of the thing we found in the research with pastors is they're managing, for example, $1 million budgets and have no idea of any business skills whatsoever. Same thing is true in education. We have a large client, a school district that's a client for ours, and one of the questions that we do in the evaluation process is whether they have an understanding and a control, if you will, of budgetary considerations, business. And in a school district of about 1,500 people, the vast majority of people will say that money in business has nothing to do with what they do. So Luzon just launched a new, what's it called, Brad? The World Classroom or something like that they just did.
Mobile classroom, yes.
Yeah, and so one of their trainings, for example, that they have in there is wealth creation. So to me, it is critical in the conversation that we're talking about. So that would be how I would come down with that. But just to very quickly say, the whole idea of stable organizations already up and running versus startups, that's a very gray difference today, that most organizations, for example, they don't even do 5-year projections anymore because they don't know what 5 years from now is going to look like. So the skills needed in leadership is a very big crossover today. Global markets versus global labor markets. We've been global market focused for a long time, but now leaders have to now figure out global labor market competition as well, and the lack of people. So I don't care what organization you are or where you are, the idea of how do you get people on board to help you grow this organization is crucial. And there's a huge deficit there of how to do that and who's competing for them. So this one has already been talked about, but I'm just going to highlight it again. And that is to say, this is not a Christian worldview issue. Kurt, you said it well. I don't care what organization training you go to, Christian, non-Christian, Zen, I don't care what it is, they're talking about this topic of impact. Triple bottom line is a normalized conversation these days. And as you well said, impact investing is not Christian per se. So lots of schools, Harvard on down, are talking and training on this particular topic. The whole concept of leadership, what does that actually mean? It's a big area for review. And yet we know that the model for what it means to be a leader, one of the quotes I have on here is Peter Drucker's, used to be the leaders knew all the answers, or at least people thought they did. Today it's knowing how to ask the right questions. Even what it looks like to be inside of an organization. If you're looking at a startup, how do you continue to develop leaders that can help support the growth of the organization? That is a huge need in the organizational structures today. Here's the part, you're right, Brad, when you say this is not necessarily my background at all. We work in the area of mergers and acquisitions, impact investment. We're not working in that field at all right now, but in mergers and acquisitions, it's the idea of due diligence before you invest, before you merge with other companies in the area of values alignment. You've talked about deal flow. You guys have already put that on the table. And that's an area I'll just admit I have very little background or knowledge about. The clarity that's needed, again, things we've already talked about, and your idea of Simon Sinek's why, Howard is very familiar with, and it is absolutely clarity around all of those things. I already mentioned the city, but so even when we talk about impacting what? Is it strictly social justice issues outside of the organizations? I don't know if any of you know, I know Dave, you're on the phone and we've talked about the book Everybody Matters, and Bob Chapman, who has a company of 52,000 employees. And one of the things he asked a philanthropist friend of his who was a large business owner was, what was he most proud of? And the other business guy, the philanthropist, said it was having to do with the sports teams in the realm of poverty and investing in those programs that he was most proud of. And Bob Chapman challenged him and said, so the 100,000 people that work inside your organization are just your way of making wealth, and the ones you care about are the 8 outside your organization. So that whole idea of what is it we're trying to impact, long-term, short-term, those kind of things are all questions that have to be asked in this topic. And then finally, what would be next steps in my mind? The mission that you talked about already, Howard. Who is the audience? You look at executive MBA programs in general. The average age is 37. They've already been made a point here. They have experience already. They're looking to get credibility and to develop skills to be effective, not to learn them originally. And then finally, how would we structure this so that it is action-based, experiential, and collaborative versus lecture? So that's that's where my head is right now. That's the kinds of things I've been thinking about and how to put this together. And I would love any questions, any input, criticisms, whatever.
I have a question.
Yes.
In looking at the types of MBA programs that could be out there, or types of business, impact investing, socially responsible companies, charities, honorable, ethical, normal. If you were going to create an MBA program where someone came out with a skill set, what would you teach? What would we teach differently to, say, an impact investor versus socially responsible investor? I'm going to start a socially responsible company versus an impact company. Would I do anything differently? Or even just say, assuming that ethics is a part of the program already, which it is in many. So, and we sensitize people to it. Maybe it's not one class, it's two, where we say, let's not screw up the environment. Let's be fair and equitable in compensation, and let's be honest with our customer, whatever. But you're still teaching accounting, marketing, management, right? Business law, all the basic courses that are expected when you get out. So my question is, it's kind of a long question, but is that what's the difference between, well, by the way, from a branding point of view and from a consistency with the BGU brand, labeling this, that, and saying that we're going to teach business in a way that's consistent values-wise. Those are pretty words, and I think that they're actionable words. But as a business person in a room here without the recording, what are you going to teach any differently? You still got to teach them accounting. You still got to learn all the rest of it. So that's my question. What would be the difference between this and maybe what we teach right now?
Well, I might jump in here just with an example. Again, I'm kind of going back to differentiation. And it's not an MBA example, but it's a BBA example. But my son goes to Belmont University in Nashville. And he is getting a BBA, Bachelor of Business degree. But his major is called music business. And so they teach accounting, entrepreneurship, organizational behavior, all the things that you would get in a BBA. But they brand it music business because they are in the heart. They're like a block away from Music Row. That's what Nashville is known for. And they have kind of all the ecosystem all around it to differentiate themselves into kind of an industry focus. So it doesn't mean that that person that goes there and gets that music business BBA cannot be a generalist and go into whatever industry they want because they got all the basics. But it does differentiate them when they come out. They can say, I'm kind of interested in this industry. All the case studies and things during that have been a little bit more like we're looking at marketing, but are we looking at all marketing? Yes, other industries. But we're also giving you special training and focus on how to do merchandise sales and marketing as artists and producing and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
So,
but let me just that's a really good point.
So,
but I was just going to say, impact investing could be, that could be farms in Ethiopia, or it could be a plumbing supply store in a poor part of Seattle, right? I mean, it's not as narrow as the music industry. It's more broad.
Well, I agree. What I was saying is I think there's a funnel. At the very top, you've got these secular mega trends or whatever that show interest and show, you know, I wouldn't say that that is narrow enough to differentiate because everybody's kind of jumping on that. I think every organization needs to kind of find their own brand or their own way of doing something, their own style of doing something. But it can still fit into a broader trend category, but you have to define it down into more of a niche, more of a, it's on trend, but you do it a certain way. So there's been other colleges that tried to do music business, like Baylor for one, but then they got rid of it because it's in Waco, it's not in Nashville,
right?
Or they didn't have the other ecosystem. Right. So it doesn't work everywhere, but it works in some places. So I would kind of think more about the alignment of theology of work is very much a, Baki, known commodity, as part of it that I think could fit in. The idea of the city, I do think is a very strong differentiation point historically with Baki, and the idea of social entrepreneurship is much more narrow, I think, than impact investing. Like I think impact investing is probably too broad for this, and it's more secular and faith-based. But I would think faith-based, values-driven leadership, or Christian values-driven leadership, or social entrepreneurship, these are kind of like an emphasis that can go along with the basics. And it says, like, why would you go to Baki to get an MBA? Well, you would do so because you want to make a difference in the world from a faith-based perspective. And where do the values come for leadership? Well, it comes from God. It doesn't come from just secular humanism to say this is what's right and wrong, but it's informed by a creator, and why do we do it? Because we want to make an impact on people and change lives, but from a faith-based perspective. So anyway, I'm throwing out just a few thoughts there, but I think the theology of work and city and kind of narrows it down some, and I think social entrepreneurship are those types of things that I think the MBA student is ready for. The MBA student is, I think we may be off base a little bit with deal flow and impact investing, because those are like super advanced people that are already far beyond maybe where the MBA is. I mean, I do think EMBA is, further along, but I'm thinking the skill sets that are going to be learning.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with our audience. And for me, that's like the first thing, knowing who we're targeting so that we can build to their need. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My father, very entrepreneurial. I'm not sure if he even got a high school education. I'm thinking entrepreneurs, they are self-driven and self-motivated. And so I don't know of an entrepreneur that said, gee, I need an MBA before I do this. They do it and then maybe backtrack to get skills somewhere, but it's more through mentoring and networking than an actual degree. So, and I'm thinking of just the MBA world. It seems like the shipping channels are so full of major freighters, and we put up in our little outboard motor. I don't know how we make an impact or create a lane for BGU with an American audience in that shipping channel. So to me, maybe, because our other degrees, definitely we need an American foundation, American Student Foundation, to support the degrees, but I'm wondering if our MBA, maybe we flip it and design it more for our cross-cultural global audience as opposed to an American audience. I know the MBA, when we first talked about it, was supposed to be the major thing that financed the school, and that it never was realized, but maybe it's the other way. Maybe the other degrees finance the MBA because we're reaching an audience like the African that is needing to, you know, have a business to sustain their family. I guess I think of African women that are providing, whether it's a farmer providing food to be sold at a market to sustain her family, or, you know, there's so many global businesses that are sustained by these little micro businesses. And maybe I know we're trying to target American audience, but maybe it's flipped. And like I'm thinking of an MBA student graduate, Brian File, who has a coffee roasting business in Fresno, and his beans are imported from Thailand, and he buys those beans specifically to subsidize those Thai farmers. So maybe the MBA is directed more to, you know, a global somebody that's then marketing the businesses to the U.S. and like coffee roasters or whatever. Obviously, that's not all, but I'm struggling with the audience. I don't think having it as an entrepreneurship, I don't think that's our audience. And if it was an entrepreneur, they'd be heading to Harvard or one of the big ships. I don't know that they would be coming to each year, but my 2 cents for whatever it's worth.
So just a quick thing, not to distract, but from the beginning, the board said every one of the degrees needs to be a cost center that supports itself. Some of the cost centers might contribute more to the overhead than others, but they all have to be self-sustainable, at least at direct cost. So that's always been from the beginning, that no one degree would subsidize the direct cost of another, but some degrees might have more contribution to overhead. So it's, you said same thing, but in a different way.
You know, it's a bit mystical as to what unmet need is out there. And I thought, see, I have a bachelor's and a master's in engineering physics and a PhD in atomic physics. So I spent a good part of my early career teaching strategic planning to Harvard MBAs in the people I met. All they understood was operational plans. That's like what we're going to do better over the next 2 to 3 years. They didn't know how to get out as far as 5 years. And so I had a fairly lucrative career helping that. Along with that, though, came an emerging spiritual need in the lives of these people. They never met a Christian in business. Some of them have had recent conversion experiences and needed somebody to mentor them. And I was pretty fearless in terms of, just saying discipleship in the workplace, not faith in the workplace, but discipleship. In other words, really transformational things that would carry in the workplace. And then in my own business life, that's been it. I had a partner that wanted to go in business with a Christian, and he didn't care if I was an engineer. And so I see the unmet needs is that the people have lack of structure in their personal lives from a spiritual standpoint, but they're dying to relate that to their business career, but not at the expense of their business career at first. But it's an integration of a new lifestyle that only God can give you that's transformational. So haven't seen people from these really good schools still come out with deficiencies. And they're self-admitted. I'm not criticizing them on that. They're self-admitted needs for spiritual dimension in their life and values. That leaves me saying, how could we reach out to that unmet need and still do the things that you were describing, Jack, accounting, business law, and so on.
Right. Yeah, I must say I've never met a Harvard MBA that had a self-esteem deficiency. I don't know about you, but they're always the smartest guys I've ever met.
Not up until the time before the fire something.
Yeah, and then those guys are all retarded too. But anyway, just kidding. Anyway, there's a business model. I'm inclined to think that this is something that we should continue to pursue. There's a business model in running a charity, in running a school. There's, getting the books right. Hello, right? Marketing, management, basic business, we were talking about it earlier. I mean, how do we relate and work with people? I think those are all positive things, and we have an angle, right? I mean, we have a brand, and this, we've kind of been maybe parsing this impact investing term too hard, but it's a socially responsible multi-bottom line where, yes, you're teaching the basics, and I'm just going to make up a percentage here, but maybe 70% of it is the basics. This is assets and liabilities, and this is how this works. But 30% of it is that this is what that looks like in a ethically sound business. And maybe it is a charity that they go to run, but they've got the credentials that they need and the branding that they need that shows that they're not only competent in business, but they've had some ethical tutoring as well. One of the comments you made, Kurt, is about having these entrepreneurs. Funny, 10 minutes before you said it, I wrote it down as conflict between being a student and an employee with its own deadlines and responsibilities. I don't think having somebody come in with a good idea and then having them get an MBA and having people invest with them, I don't think that's probably the right. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, for people who are graduates, as a carrot, that you have a pool of investors that are willing to consider.
Yeah.
Now that.
Yeah, that's where I see it fitting in. That's a great thought, because it's kind of like every student is going to say, or every person out there who's a prospective student will say, what is this MBA going to get me, right? And that's what Lynn's point, like, okay, is it really worth the value? Is it worth the effort? Why should I go through all that? Well, you go through it because you may be missing certain skills. You may be entrepreneurial, but you've never had certain classes that are the basics. And if you want to scale a company, sometimes those things are very valuable, and you want to get the training. But if you are a person who feels called to business and you see that socially responsible business is what you want to do, and you want to make a difference with your business calling, then you want to find somewhere where you can go. And what's attractive in any MBA is the alumni network that you join, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not what you learn, but it's who you interact with, and then this employee group. It's why people join fraternities, sororities. It's why people get degrees and go to different things. So what could we do at Baki and to say, well, we may or may not have the alumni network that's as rich as other places, but we've established a network. And that's where I think this network of these things, where we've worked at it and we've got a strategic connection to Lions Dens and Praxis and all of these things. And we kind of will feed you kind of into that and help you make connections into that if you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you want to, take your business to the next level or something. So I don't necessarily think it's something. I don't think it's like we say we offer it, but networking or how to fundraising or these other things are a part of that, and then we can connect you into these Christian, faith-based organizations that can carry it on into the real world. So I think maybe business as mission is a little bit more describing the differentiation, maybe from the point of view as opposed to impact investing. I think the investor part or the network part is kind of like it's like an after connection that maybe you learn the skills how to connect into those networks while you're going to school.
Right.
But I also agree with you, by the way, about 70% has to be on the basics. We have to be about excellence in teaching those skills and getting people what they need. And then there's this emphasis part. Maybe it's a quarter of the time or something that you're emphasizing where do our values come from, or faith-based or faith integrated business models, is what we kind of train you on.
Desperately need to hear stories.
Right.
The one that came to mind is that one of my clients was Bell Labs, and one day I got a call from Bell Labs, and they said, we're going to quit Bell Labs and leave and go start our own business. And I said, boy, that's exciting, because I love small business, so I think you will too. And they said, you don't get it, do you? And I said, what do you mean? He said, we're going in business with you, because you and your partner are the only entrepreneurs we can think of that we would trust, coming at it from a Christian perspective. So, you just get shocking examples of where faith-based values in the harshest of the high-tech world end up turning corners that, they weren't manipulated. They were just values.
I think there's values, and which would be a key. I also think there's this idea of there's a range of kind of business as mission hybrid business models. Yeah. So you could actually teach a course in the business models that can make a business as mission, and there, like I said, there's a range of them, and then you lay them out to the student, and then they can pick the ones as if they feel a calling to business, and say, my passion is business, my experiences may have been business, came from a family of entrepreneurs, I like business, I see a need for business to provide, and that's what I'm good at. And then they go into this program, they're learning those basics, but they're also getting exposed to, did you know that there are these stories or case studies of all these types of ways that people have integrated faith into their business, some of which it's the mission of the business, some of which it's a byproduct of the business, and it's all about the values, it's all about the culture, it's all about, value creation for the customers. But it also says, our product can be the mission itself in changing, society, bringing the gospel, other things, incorporated. So these hybrids, people want to know, like, what do those look like? What are people doing? What's working, and get them exposed to that. That'd be I think, a really rich content course.
So what do you think, Lynn? Some ideas.
I'm writing as fast as I can write.
I'm recording this. So.
Oh, yeah, good, thank you. Yes to all the above. I am inclined. Let me just throw an idea on the table. Strictly just flew through my brain at this moment, so no background for it at this point. But one of the big considerations that I have is to make the MBA program much more experiential, much more collaborative. And I realize we have distance challenges and all that. We do overtures in other classes. But here's the idea that flew through my brain was, what if instead of waiting until we develop a network after I'm finished, we do it halfway through the program, where you get a chance to ask questions, put models in front of people, whatever, that could change the second year of the program, and put you in a focus for that time period that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do when you get introduced to all this afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I think, I think of the graduates and their little 2-minute speeches and that I've listened to. I could recall 10 of them right now where there's a business angle to what they're doing. They're out there doing something, like this poor guy that's on the border between, Syria, Jordan. He's just dealing with refugees. I mean, there's something there. I mean, if somebody were really so motivated and they were so trained and they felt the call, but just connecting them, and how many people have gone all the way through the program or in the program right now, 600 or 700 anyway, and you got X number of MBA students. Just expose them to say, all right, these, you want to do something with this, a business model, you want to help some people. How about this person, and they're all over the world. I think it would just make their brains and their hearts go wild. And they may not do any of them, but it'd make them start thinking about, it's what you, as Brad would call, pattern recognition.
That's right.
Right? I mean, then they're, yeah, it's experiential, right? Now they go out in the world and they're walking down the street and they say, there's a bunch of homeless people in my town, and there's 11,000, which there happen to be, and about a third of them are drug addicts, which they happen to be. And I'll bet there is a program for recovery for them, which there is. And oh, by the way, the federal, the state, insurance, and local programs all pay to it. So, geez, if I came up with something, it would be a business model. And I already have that business model, by the way, where you could take those people and actually get them through recovery, get them back mainstream, and along the way, you actually made some money.
This is Dave Sirey, and so he's having a little trouble getting through, so I'm going to put him on speaker. So Dave, you're on speaker now if you want to say something. Can you hear me, Dave?
I just faintly.
Okay.
Really faint.
We can hear you quite well, so go ahead and say what you were going to say. So Becky, we can hear him quite well if he wants to talk. He's having trouble getting through somehow.
Anyway, the point is that experiential, I think, makes a lot of sense. And we have a living laboratory of hundreds of people that are out there that are right on the edge of it.
Well, Lynn, I don't know if you know or not, but the MBA started as an experiential degree. Every class that we had an on-site component to it. Because we had so many students in the Bahamas, we actually on-sited the Bahamas and then did city-type trips within the city of Freeport. And there was some projects developed by the government of the Bahamas for the Bahamian students. And that ended, I think, about 2012 when BGU went through a whole revision. Were you aware of that on-site part?
No.
Yeah, Carolyn, that was my master degree.
So if he wants to talk more.
My twin.
Right now.
We
See,
need
I'm
to
actually
have,
hearing myself from the other phone.
when there was enough students in the
Hang on
program,
just a
you
second.
could find, rather than everybody travel to a specific city,
Part of this, it works.
have like a city in the U.S. for U.S. students, a city in the Caribbean for Caribbean students, or in Africa for the African students, and there would be a coordinated class, and then we could combine in Zoom, and yet still have, not everybody travels, probably someone that has more travel expenses than someone else. So that way you could break it down.
Don't know, hang on.
Experience would be suited to their culture and their country. Because talking about federal, state, and local governments here in the U.S. might apply, but if you're
They're on the speaker.
They're on a computer, that's the difference. You're on your phone.
So right now, Dave, we can hear you if you speak on your phone. So tell Dave to go ahead and go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly. So,
Okay.
Becky, I'm going to hang up now.
think-
This one. Thank you. Thank you.
I think for this discussion, it's worth knowing where the MBA program started. It was the brainchild of Dennis Bakke. He proposed it. We have it because he wanted it. It was part of the theology at work energy that he produced years ago. It was meant to be for all people, not just Christians. If there's any continuation, I hope the spirit of that prevails. Business isn't just for Christians. In terms of having money available, that's what MBA programs are like all over the world. We won't have much uniqueness to offer because if you graduate from Harvard, just the fact that you have an MBA from Harvard opens doors to money. That's what they sell. That's why people go there. It's not just their salary. It's all the infrastructure that goes with the business world. So in analyzing it, I really question why we should go forward with an MBA program, because I'm getting the impression it takes time and energy away from other far more unique opportunities and offerings that we make at BGU. If we do go forward, I really encourage it not to be just Christian focused. I think that would be fundamentally incorrect. Finished.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Brad just had to step out. One of our board members is leaving, so he'll be back. But I think you brought a very critical point about the MBA being Dennis's dream, and also we could very easily and should focus on all of God's children, not just Christians.
So the MBA, the way it's designed, is the only degree that a person does not have to sign our doctoral statement. They have to say, we respect the doctoral statement, but you don't have to be. So it's always been not for people that respected the Christian values of business, but it is not required that they be a Christian. So David, you're correct on that. That's how it's always been, and that's at this point we've continued that way because there's a lot of value in those conversations. So can you hear me, David, or I'm not sure if you can?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Brad. I can hear you. Thank you very much.
I apologize you couldn't get through. And it's just the difference between a telephone and a computer. But Lynn, you're hearing Dave Syrie, and at some point would love to figure out a time for y'all to talk because he's got some great stories.
Yeah, I would like that. Anybody else?
Well, this is Gwen, Lynn. I'm sorry I had to step out for an oral review, but I'm going to look at this recording, and I love your PowerPoint, and I'm just excited because, as Dave Syrie said, and Brad, it's not just for Christians. They have to respect our doctrinal view, our Christian doctrinal view. But it is open to everyone, but we need to open it up. There are many, many non-Christians out there who could do great things from the learning that we have to offer. And I like the experiential part.
Thanks, Gwen.
I want to just add maybe a resource that might add to the list of things. I've been involved a little bit with an organization called Enactus, which is formerly called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise. It actually started in Dallas years ago, had some Christian roots, but basically these are clubs in colleges all around the world. It's an international thing. They have competitions in their different clubs in their nations, and then they have a World Cup, and then they all compete in the World Cup. But it's all about, now it's called Enactus, but it's all about free enterprise, and it's triple bottom line. They're judged and measured by their financial impact, their social impact, and their environmental impact. And so just wanted to add it as a resource, and not so much from, but just what we can learn from their model and some of the trends and what they do, because I've been very impressed with a lot of the students that come out of that all around the world. And, this idea of the triple bottom line, you don't have to be, a Christian to, think along those lines. If we added the theology of work aspect, you could argue that there's a quadruple bottom line where we add the spiritual aspect to it, but we could teach that and expose people to it, but not necessarily hold people to being a Christian to come in. If they're getting the content and they're getting the skills and they're getting the degree and they're getting the alumni network or the opportunities to plug into, of course, we'd accept everybody. I think a strategic question is, would we want to, because all of our other curriculum has kind of this Christian aspect, why would we make the MBA an exception? I wouldn't go so far as to say they have to be a Christian to come in. They have to respect it. But I don't know if we should necessarily say we're going to section this off and not build in, maybe some of these theology of work or spiritual aspects of it, and how you integrate that, how much you integrate that is a key question.
So the Christian theology has always been overt, but frankly, the people that come in want that, even though they may say, that whole conversation I had in China, where they said, we'd rather you talk about Christian theology than free market economics, because free market economics sounds American. Political theory, we want to hear the background to your business theory that comes from Christianity. So that's just it. But they said none of us are interested in becoming Christians. We just want to hear where that came from.
Right. And I'm saying I like that approach where you don't hide from, that's a differentiator, but you don't make it a litmus test either.
So Lynn, I don't know about your timing, and if you want to wind this down or keep going questions or whatever, but you obviously have people that really care about the MBA. And as Dave Syrie said, the MBA was part of our whole formation purpose. And so it is critical. Now we need to keep asking the question why, because I think Howard mentioned, but it is there. You have people that love it, really want to help it. We also know that you're walking into something that needs some clarity and definition. We're here to help. And so you've got a team. And so whatever you want to do with this team, it's up to you. But you can tell there's some energy behind this, and we are committed and want to follow your leadership and want to help.
All right, guys. And yes, Brad, I do have to jump off. I have another call I have to get on here. But thank you all so very much for taking the time to do this.
I'd like to add one more thing, if I could.
Jump in, Dave. We can hear you.
One of the reasons that Dennis suggested we start the MBA program, the two of us funded, as I recall, around $100 a piece to get it going, and that was supposed to be the cash flow of the future. You had the MBA program, and you opened it to all people, and there was a way to solicit, especially with the theology at work. Well, that didn't work out, from my observation, but that was a part of the genesis of the MBA.
That's correct. So what happened is Dave and Dennis funded the first year of the director of the MBA. And that director didn't do the job perhaps as much as we hoped. We had a lot of students at the beginning, but they didn't keep sustained. And part of that, though, is what we're talking about today. How do we have a clear niche and articulate it well? But the issue is not that the MBA was a bad idea. The issue was just leadership.
Well, in my mind, it seems to be that it's an extension of Dennis's, what he wrote about in Joy at Work and Decision Maker and all that. How do you teach people to run organizations like AES, and they don't have to be Christian to do that? I thank you all very much for your time. I hope I have permission to reach out and talk to each of you and continue the conversation.
So thank you. And Lynn, I want to say a quick prayer over you because you have a challenge. Father, we just thank you for Lynn, her leadership, her gifts, her passion. We thank you for everybody in this room. We thank you for just even the history of Dave's passion and commitment for all these years. For those that are others on the phone, Kurt and Dave Haytag, Father, we just thank you for how you've drawn this team together. And we just ask for wisdom and discernment. And give us just clarity on how we can help Lynn and how this can move forward in the way you desire. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.